Thank you, Mr. Wicker, and for the Wicker family. What we're going to talk about today, that is a perfect demonstration of what the text is going to be teaching us this morning in Luke chapter 16. So you can turn there. And I'm going to unashamedly today talk about money and talk about how you can give to eternal causes, because this is an important thing. Madeline joined the Wicker family, and the Wickers have invested in eternity, and you get to see the payment for that, or the reward for that investment paying off before you today. And so there's this correlation between money and eternity, and we're going to tie all that together today in Luke chapter 16. I'm going to read verses 1 through 15, and this text today I think is one of the hardest to understand. It's one that when you read it and you hear it for the first time, it kind of smacks you between the eyes. It doesn't sound right, but there's so much good stuff here. So what we've been talking about when it comes to marriage and money is how the Bible offers us wisdom, it offers us guidance, and it helps us to navigate the complexities of relationships and money. It's what most of our life revolves around, those things. And both of these things tend to bring great joy and great anxiety into our lives. And so that's why we're spending 4 weeks talking about marriage and money. This is the last week of this. And so let's read Luke chapter 16, verses 1 through 15. This is Jesus talking, and he says this: "There was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was wasting his possessions. And he called him and said to him, 'What is this that I hear about you? Turn in the account of your management, for you can no longer be manager.' And the manager said to himself, 'What shall I do, since my master is taking the management away from me? I am not strong enough to dig. I'm ashamed to beg. I've decided what to do, so that when I am removed from management, people may receive me into their houses.' So summoning his master's debtors one by one, he said to the first, 'And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of unrighteous wealth, so that when it fails, they may receive you into the eternal dwellings. One who is faithful in a very little is also faithful in much. And one who is dishonest in a very little is also dishonest in much. If you then have not been faithful in the unrighteous wealth, who will entrust to you the true riches? And if you have not been faithful in that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money.' The Pharisees, who were lovers of money, heard all these things, and they ridiculed him. And he said to them, 'You are those who justify yourselves before men, but God knows your hearts. For what is exalted among men is an abomination in the sight of God.'" We're going to talk about money today and how we invest the two most precious things that we have for us. And those two most precious things are money and time. And the Bible speaks a lot to those two things because they are so precious to us that most of the time we tend to put those things right in front of God. And it's those things that tend to capture our hearts. And God wants to capture our hearts. God, throughout the Bible, he calls himself a jealous God. It's almost like a spouse who understands that his spouse's heart has been given to somebody else. And so he pursues our hearts. That's what he's trying to win. He doesn't really care about money. He doesn't really care about how you spend your time. He cares about your heart. And he's trying to capture your heart. I remember when I first started trying to woo, I like that word, trying to woo my wife. The lengths that I went to are amazing. And so she was a student at the University of Texas, and I would go we spent 1 year together in the same town, and I would go find her car wherever it was parked on the UT campus, and I would leave notes on her windshield. That was a challenge. But I was willing to go to that lengths because I wanted to woo her to my side. And God will go to great lengths to try to woo you so that you will give your heart to him. He is jealous. And again, if we're honest, a lot of the times our hearts are consumed with the love of money, and they are consumed with the selfish way that we spend our time. So we offer things to you here. We offer you chances to give. We offer you chances to serve. Those things aren't just for our benefit, they're for yours. And so this passage of Scripture is confusing in some ways because what happens is there's a manager who the boss discovers that he's not doing a good job in management. So he calls him in and says, hey, I'm going to fire you. Get your house, get your stuff in order so you can report back to me. And so the guy goes and he calls in the accounts that he manages and he says, how much do you owe? 100. Okay, make it 50. So he just reduced the debt that this guy owes back to his boss by 50%. He calls another guy and says, how much do you owe? 80. Okay, make it 50. So he's reducing the amount that these people owe to the company that they owe it to. See what he's done? He's really cheating and undermining his boss because he says to himself, I'm too old to dig. I'm too proud to beg. What am I going to do when my time comes and I get fired and I get thrown out onto the street? How will I live? I've got a little bit of time. I've got some resources at my disposal. What can I do with those that will maximize me later on down the road? And so really he cheats his boss and cancels some of these debts to win friends. And the confusing part of the passage says that the master commends him for this. And when we first read this, it seems like, okay, is that really what that says? That the guy cheats his boss and the boss commends him? And yes, that is exactly what this teaches. I'm going to give you two pictures of how this passage is illustrated. And the first one is by this picture that I've got here of a hotel room. So this is my last Sunday before I'm going on a sabbatical. I'll be gone until August the 10th. And then I'll come back. That's the week before school starts. How about that, kids? I'm already talking about school starting again. That make you feel good? School's not even over yet. And I'm already talking about it coming back. I'm going to keep saying it just to twist the knife a little bit. So school will start in the middle of August. I'm going to come right before that. And so the church has just been gracious to give me a sabbatical for the summer. And so today's my last day before I start that sabbatical tomorrow. And so on part of my sabbatical, I'm going to be traveling and doing some things. And since I'm by myself, I'm going cheap on a hotel. So I found this hotel, and this is a picture of the room. Why the laughter? I mean, it's got a bed, it's got carpet. It's not very nice, is it? So what I'm going to do, I'm only going to stay here for a night, is the good part. But while I'm here, I've decided that I'm going to go to Lowe's. I'm going to get some paint. I'm going to probably paint the walls because that's just some hideous wallpaper there. Probably want to change some light fixtures, and so I will do that. Probably run by Hobby Lobby, and I'd probably get some different pictures to put on the walls and maybe some different furniture. The mattresses there look pretty firm, and so I'm going to go to the mattress store. I'm going to buy me a couple of new mattresses. I'm going to put them in the room, and definitely need new carpet. Definitely need that. Is Bed Bath & Beyond even a thing anymore? I don't know if it is. I don't know where I would go to buy a bedspread, but I'm going to go buy a new bedspread too because that looks pretty hideous. Now, I like to sleep well. And so when I'm at this hotel, I'm going to go to great lengths to make this as nice as I possibly can. So this is just the first night that I'm going to go on my trip. Now, as I'm saying these things, what I hope you're thinking in your mind is that is the stupidest plan I've ever heard in my life. And you're probably thinking, you're telling me you're going to spend one night at this hotel and you're going to go to these great lengths to redecorate, to add mattresses, blah, blah. And the answer is that would be foolish of me to do that. That's what you were thinking. At some point, again, hopefully you understood that I was kidding. I'm not going to do all those things. You know why I'm not going to do all those things? I'm spending one night there. Now, if this was my house that I was going to be living in, I might go to some of those links, but this is just one night. James chapter 4, verse 14 says this. It says, "You do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time, and then it vanishes." The Bible tells us that this life is a vapor. It's those couple of days that we get here in Houston when we can actually blow our breath and we see it because it's so cold, and then it just disappears. The Bible teaches us that our breath is like, or that our life is like that. It's a vapor. It's here, and then it's gone. And so why do we spend so much time investing in the things of this life if this life is so short? To put it in the Daron Adkison version of James 4:14, here's what I would say, is you don't remodel your hotel room. You would be foolish to pour a lot of money, paint, carpet, bedspread, mattresses, into a hotel room that you're only going to be in for one night. That would be foolish. And what this passage is trying to teach us is that it would also be foolish for you to invest so much time and money into this life when this life is so short. It's like a vapor. You would be foolish to do that. Here's the second picture. I've told this story before, but it's been a while. This was my first car that I had. It was a 1977 AMC Matador. Everybody say, oh yeah. That is a smooth car. I didn't really want it. My dad kind of picked it out and talked me into it. But I will tell you, that thing right there could run. I mean, it would go fast. And I went to school in UTEP in El Paso, and I lived, my parents lived, and my hometown was in Hobbs, New Mexico. It's 243 miles from El Paso to Hobbs. And in the middle of there's a little map over there. In the middle, there's only really one town. It's Carlsbad. And so it's 166 miles from El Paso to Carlsbad. And so out there's really nothing. You see Guadalupe Mountain State Park, Carlsbad Cavern, or National Park. Carlsbad Caverns is there, but really there's nothing out there. So 1989, May, my grandfather died, and I was traveling home from El Paso to go to Hobbs for the funeral. So I'm in my 77 AMC Matador. I'm cruising out there. It's, 9:30 at night. And I'm just cruising along, and it's hot. It's the middle of May, kind of like it is here now. I had finals that just ended. And so as I'm cruising through there, air conditioner's going, the radio's blasting. I'm just trying to get there as fast as I can. And I look down, and I see a little light come on my dashboard. And it says ALT. Now, I'm not a car guy, but I quickly figured out that is the alternator light. And what the alternator does is it recharges the battery as you're driving. And so I figured out pretty quickly when the radio stopped working that my battery was going to die, which meant my car was going to die, which meant that somewhere between El Paso and Carlsbad, I'd just come out of Guadalupe Mountains National Park area. I'd come over this hill. And so I figured out that my battery is going to die. And so I realized that I had a limited amount of time, that I didn't have a whole lot of time. I had a limited amount of time, and I had a limited amount of resources. I had a little bit of battery left. I just had just a little bit of time before my car was going to leave me stranded somewhere out there in the middle of nowhere at 10 o'clock at night. And so I turned the air conditioner off. I rolled my window down. I'm cranking the window. We didn't have buttons back then. I had to actually crank it so that it would come down. So I turned the air conditioner off, turned the radio off, rolled my windows down, and I floored it. I mean, I was just going as fast as I possibly could because I knew I had a little bit of time and a limited amount of resources, and I was flying. So I can remember I was cruising along. I come up this hill, I make a turn, and my car just died. And so I coasted as long as I could. If you know me, I'm pretty lazy. So I coasted as long as I could, and I pull over to the right off the highway, and I sat there for a second and says, okay, just like this manager, what am I going to do? I'm too lazy to walk. And it is 10 o'clock at night in the middle of the desert. So we played in a bowl game the December before this, and so I put on my jersey. It was a white jersey. So I put my jersey on. I had a knife, put my knife in my pocket, put a mouthful of sunflower seeds, and I start walking. Now, the best that I could tell, I was probably 15 miles from White City. White City is the town that you turn off to go to Carlsbad Caverns, and you go this way on to Carlsbad. So I figured I was about 15 miles from White City, and so I just started walking. And I don't know how long I walked. Honestly, it probably wasn't that long, maybe an hour. And a van pulls over, and it was full of Mormon Boy Scouts. And they put me in the car. They were going to Carlsbad Caverns for the weekend. It was a Friday night. They put me in the car, took me on, and I called back home from White City and got a ride home. My point in telling you the story is, as I'm cruising along, I figured out, had a little bit of time, and I had limited resources, and I wanted to make the most of those things. So I want you to get those two pictures in your mind of when we look at this passage. We don't redecorate hotel rooms. Why? Because we're only there for a short time. And we have just a little bit of time, and we have a little bit of resources, and we have to make the most of them while we're here. This is what this story is trying to teach us. The boss calls the manager in, says, hey, you've been doing a bad job. I'm going to fire you. Get your accounts in order. The manager realizes, okay, I just have a little bit of time. I have a limited amount of resources. What can I do? And so he quickly goes to the people that owe his boss money, and he reduces their debts by 50%, by 20%. And what he's trying to do is to use a little bit of time and the limited resources that he has to win friends. Because he knows that he's about to get kicked off to the curb, and he's not going to have a job anymore, and he needs people to take care of him. And so he reduces the debts so that they will take care of him when he's kicked off to the curb. And so he reduces these debts. And it says that the master commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness. For his shrewdness. So I got a question. Some of you say to me, well, you're talking about investing in eternity, sacrificing in this life and investing in eternity. And you may say to me, what if you're wrong? What if all this stuff about church and eternity and investing, what if you're wrong about that? Well, that's a fair question. In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, Paul's writing, and he says, hey, look, if the resurrection never happened and all of this stuff, if we're wrong about that, then we're to be pitied above all men. Now, look, I've done extensive study, and I firmly believe that the resurrection is true, that what the Bible teaches is true. So I don't think I'm wrong, but let's just play it out for a second. If I'm wrong, then I've kind of just wasted part of my life here. I could have had a bigger house. I could have had more time to spend on myself. I could have lost some of those things. But let me turn it around, though. What if you're wrong? What if the resurrection did happen? What if this life is a vapor? What if what really matters is the life to come? That's eternal. What if you're wrong? And what if I'm right? If I'm wrong, I've just wasted a life. But if you're wrong, you've wasted eternity. So we have to answer this question in our minds of, do we really believe what the Bible teaches about eternity? Because that should change everything about the way that we look at money and possessions and the way that we spend our time. Because the master, he looks at this manager of his, and he commends him. I mean, he just robbed him out of a lot of money, about a lot of income, and still he looks at him and he commends him for his shrewdness. It's an interesting word, shrewd. It's just like it sits on the edge of, is it positive or negative? You know what I mean? It's kind of like, I like the word guile. Like, he had a lot of guile. I think it's a good word. Some people think it's a negative word, but it kind of sits right on the edge. And a lot of times it's how you use shrewd. You could say, well, she was a shrewd businesswoman. But we could say, and then it's positive, or we could say he was shrewd in the way that he dealt with his customers, Well, they were shrewd about their business. But it can have some negative connotations, almost like just a little sharp. Here's some synonyms of shrewd: savvy, clever, observant, sage, wise. Those are all positive. Here's some other synonyms: cunning, crafty, wily, calculating, disingenuous. So for our teenagers in the room, a little sus, maybe. So there's a little bit about them that when we say that they're shrewd, it's just like on the border. Is it positive or is it negative? And this guy, it says that he commended him for his shrewdness. I want you to be really clear that he is not being commended for his integrity. And integrity matters, and that's what makes this shrewd not necessarily a positive thing, but he's commended for his shrewdness, not his integrity. He's also commended because he is preparing himself for what is to come. He knows he's about to get thrown out. He's not going to have a job anymore, no more income, and he's commended for taking care of himself when that time comes. So when we look at this passage, we have to look at it from that lens. He was shrewd. He knew what was coming. He had a little bit of time, and he had a little bit of resources. They were limited. And he also knew that his time was short, and so more important was what was to come after the firing. How did he manage that? So this word shrewd, it means able to judge a situation accurately and turn it to your own advantage. And again, we can make this positive, we can make it negative. Sometimes it's selfish. They were dealt with shrewdly. He was shrewd in his dealings. But it means to judge a situation and act or turn it to your own advantage. Sometimes we do that at the cost of moral compromise. We do it sometimes in a way that compromises our integrity, like this guy. In the Greek lexicon, the word shrewd and the word wise are really literally right next to each other. Because if we said this man was wise in his dealings, that's positive. But wisdom and shrewd, you can see how they're related. They knew what to do and how to do it, sometimes at the cost of their integrity. So this man is commended. I want to pull 4 quick things out of this passage. And this is Senior Sunday. In just a few minutes, we're going to call our graduating seniors up here. We're going to recognize them, both high school and college graduates. And so really, some of my questions are for them as well, because this is for all of us, but it's important for us to ask the question, how are you going to spend your life? Because you have a little bit of time, and you have a limited amount of resources, and we don't decorate our hotel rooms, so how are you going to spend your life? For all of us in the room, this is the question. So here are 4 principles I want you to think about when it comes to money. Number 1 is begin with the end in mind. Where do you want to end up? This is my definition of the American dream. You graduate high school, you go to college, you get a job, you retire, you die. Congratulations. You're on step 1. Is that really all that life is? We graduate, get a job, we retire, we die. Is that really it? Or is there more to it than that? This life is short. We don't redecorate our hotel rooms. So we begin with the end in mind. In other words, just like this manager, I know where I'm going to end up. This is what he says to himself. What shall I do? I'm not strong enough to dig. I'm ashamed to beg. I've decided what to do, so that when I'm removed from management, people may receive me into their homes. So he says, I know what's coming, and so I want to begin with the end. I want them to welcome me into their homes. How can I get there? And he says, I know what I'll do. I'll just forgive their debts. Oh, you owe 100, make it 50. You owe 80, make it 60. And so he begins to cancel their debts so that they can like him more and welcome them into their homes. So here's the follow-up principle to this. If you want to end up rich in this life and broke in the next one, then keep investing in the things of this world. If you want to keep redecorating your hotel room, you just go right ahead. In the next life, what will they get you? We spend a lot of money. We're not going to go into a lot of details about how we spend money, but just to give you an example, we spend more money on I think it's pet food. If we took the amount of money that we spent on pet food and turned it around to solving the hunger crisis in the world, we could fix it. But in America, we spend more on pet food than that. I have a 3-car garage that I can park 1 car in. Right next door to us, over here, there's a storage place. There's enough storage places in America, we could give everybody in America at least 1 room in it, solve the homeless crisis. But we put all of our leftover stuff that won't fit in our 3-car garages into the storage places. We have so much. We are rich in this life. And if you want to end up rich in this life and broke in the next one, then keep investing in the things of this world. Because there's only one thing that we take with us when we leave this life, and that is relationships. I firmly believe that we're going to stand before God at the judgment seat someday, and we're all going to be standing there. And I'm going to be able to look over there and see people that I have invested in, either with my time or my money, and I'm going to see them, and they're going to be in heaven because of my investment, or at least partially because of my investment. I think I'm going to be able to look over there, too, and I'm going to see people who are destined for the Christless eternity that we call hell, and they're going to look at me and go, why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you invest in me? Why did you spend so much time redecorating your hotel room, which is foolish? Why so much effort there and no effort in me? How are we going to invest our lives? So, second question, if you want to be rich in the next life, invest in eternal things. Here's the question, where are you investing? The only thing we take with us, our relationships in the next life, are relationships and people. People you know, people that you don't know. And so we invest in the things of eternity. Julie and I have this phrase, if something doesn't go right or if it's something that breaks in our house and it's just things of this world, we'll just go wood, hay, and straw. That's from 1 Corinthians, I think it is, where Paul says some of these things in this life, they're just wood, hay, and straw. We just mean that they're going to burn up someday. We don't get to take those things with us. We just don't. So where are we investing? I had a friend of mine that I worked a summer camp with in 1993, and we did this little reunion over Zoom and during COVID, and he was giving us a life update of where he's been over the last 20 years, and he told us a story that his mom was a teacher. He's from North Carolina. His mom was a teacher, taught for 40 years, and just looked forward to retirement. Literally, school ended on Friday. Saturday morning, they found her dead in her chair. That she just had a massive heart attack and she died. So she spent her whole life working for retirement, working to get there where she could travel and do things, and then she never got to use it. And so he said, that was when his oldest was like 12 years old, something like that. He has 3 kids. And he said at that moment they decided as a family that they were going to visit all 50 states as a family before the oldest kid graduated high school. And so for the next 6 years, they made this plan, this vision of how they were going to invest their time and their money so that they could achieve that vision. They don't want to see it wasted. So where are you investing? We begin with the end in mind. If I want to invest in eternity, then I turn around and I invest wisely where my time and money go. That's what this shrewd manager did. It's why he was commended. Jesus says this, Luke 16:11, if you've not been faithful in the unrighteous wealth, that's just the stuff of this life, who will entrust to you the true riches? If you've been a poor money manager here, in eternity, why would we give you the true riches? Why would we give you the good stuff if you can't even be faithful with the small stuff? I want to be really clear here too, is another point, that Jesus condemns the poor use of worldly wealth, not the possession of it. Never in one time does Jesus ever condemn being rich. He warns us against being rich, but he doesn't condemn it. So Jesus condemns the poor use of worldly wealth, not the possession of it. God calls us to be faithful stewards or managers of his resources. Everything we have belongs to him. The question is this, are you trustworthy with God's money? Do you even know where your money goes? It's one of the next steps that we have on your notes is analyze where you're spending your money. Do you know where your money goes? I have almost 30 years now of Quicken data. I can go back and print a report and it can show me everywhere, every dollar that I've ever spent. And if Julie and I want to just slap her in the face sometimes, we go, how much are we spending on that? And the number pops up. And I can't argue with that number. And that shows where I'm investing. And are we being wise stewards of that? Am I trustworthy? Here's Jesus again. He says, if you have not been faithful in that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? I'm typically better with other people's stuff than my own. If I borrow your car, I'm going to drive a little better than I would with my own probably. So we have to be faithful with what somebody else has given to us. So how are we going to do that? Are we trustworthy? The primary method that God uses in our lives to keep money in its proper perspective is by giving it away. Again, we're not after your money here. We're doing fine financially. Could we do better? Yes. My challenge to you is you need to give your money away, because that is how we demonstrate that our hearts belong to God and not to our money. Are you a trustworthy manager? Are you giving your money away? Here's Luke 16:13. No servant can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You can't serve God and money. Proverbs 3:19. Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your produce, and then your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will be bursting with wine. Another passage that Julie and I quote all the time is, it's better a dry crust in a house of peace than feasting in a house of strife. Sometimes your barns seem fuller and your vats more full when you're giving your stuff away, when you recognize that there's other people who need this more than I do. Acts 2:45, they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. Hebrews 13:16, don't neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. So the question here is, where are you giving? Where do you give your money away? Where are you investing in eternity? We talked just a few minutes ago about Camp Kid Zone. How many of y'all came to Christ at VBS when you were a kid? Anybody in the room? I'm seeing probably, 10, 15 hands around the room. VBS is this opportunity. We call it Camp Kid Zone, but it's really Vacation Bible School. It's the same format. It's this opportunity that we have to invest in eternity in children's lives. There are people from all over the community who honestly, they need somewhere to put their kids during the day, and so they'll send them from one VBS to the next. And so we have this chance when they come here to give them the gospel, to invest in eternity. Children, Daniel, student ministry. I walked by the wall over here where Daniel's trying to take some the envelopes to raise money to support camp. There's a lot of envelopes still on that wall. Why? I mean, there are all of us are able to take one of those envelopes and just put money in there to help send kids to camp. How many of y'all came to Christ at a youth camp? I'm one of those. Yes? Several of us around the room. And so student ministry, children's ministry is important. What we do with adult ministry here is important. What we do with missions. We just did a mission trip to Latin America. Still trying not to say the name. We just did that. And so I got a chance to go into homes, 30 homes that week, and talk about Christ. That was partly because of your faithful giving to missions that I get to do that. It's expensive to do that. So you invest in eternity when you do that. So make giving to your local church a priority. Where are you giving? My challenge is to make your local church giving a priority. If it's not here, if this isn't your church, then give to your local church wherever you are. But give your money to your local church. We keep the doors open here. We're a lighthouse in our community. I just told you, gave you examples of how we're using your money to invest it in eternity. Make giving to your local church a priority. Second is make sacrificial giving a practice. We talk about tithing. Tithing means tenth. Look, I just don't think tithing is a New Testament principle. It's a great principle. It's a great place to start. I think the Old Testament teaches tithing, but honestly, it teaches to give a tenth of that, and a tenth of that, and a tenth of that, and every now and then you give a tenth of this. And so really, it's a 33 and a third. The New Testament teaches sacrificial giving. And for a lot of us here in America, a tenth, 10%, it just doesn't hurt. We could get by giving 40% away. And so I think God asks us to sacrificially give. It's meant to teach us that we can depend upon Christ and not depend upon our money. So practice sacrificial giving. And then third is get involved personally. Will we take your money? If you just come every Sunday and write a check, yes, we will cash those. We will deposit that money and we will use it to further the kingdom. Yes, we will. What we really want, though, is for you to get involved personally, is for you to give financially and then get involved personally with your time and your talents and your treasure and all that God has given to you, that you would give that back to him. And then the last thing I have for you before we do our seniors is this. Why do we talk about giving? And here's why. Probably the most famous verse in the Bible. For God so loved the world that he what? He gave. He did not withhold his very own son. And yet I'm going to stand here sometimes and go, gosh, do I give 8% or 8.5%? Do I tithe on the net or on the gross? We ask questions, I just sold this piece of property. Do I have to tithe on that? And we so often look for ways to give as little as we can instead of just giving as much as we can. And we do that because God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. So for our seniors in the room and for all of us in the room, I just ask the question, where are you investing? And what's going to be the payoff for that? I've invested in some things that haven't turned out so well. I've invested in some things that have turned out really well. And an eternal investment in the kingdom of God will pay off for eternity. It's that idea of, are you redecorating your hotel room? An investment in eternity. We have just a little bit of time. We have a limited amount of resources. Let's make the most of those.